Okay, I show at 9:01. Good morning for the live people. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for anyone listening to the recording. Yes, we are recording this session. For those of you who attended the last session, which was 2 weeks ago, just about now, that recording is available. The slides are available. You can either send me an email at the very end of the session. You'll see my email address, g.spalding@peakelement.com. Otherwise, talk to Rhianna Dyson. Good morning, good morning. I'm trying to wake up. Okay, here we go. All right, so as you can see on the slide, this is the second part. There are 15 total best practices, and we'll go through those quickly. So a quick review for those who might not have been on the last session. What is DevOps? It represents a change in culture. It's a culture shift in the world of IT. It's focused around, or its reason for being, is the rapid delivery of services to the business. It's going to force us to adopt agile and lean practices. It's going to, with a big picture thinking, system-oriented approach. It emphasizes people and culture because there's no other way to do this. Collaboration and communication between ops and dev, kind of obvious. And throwing automation into the mix. In other words, once we got the culture right and once we have the processes right, then we can actually start to automate deployment. And that's when the real payoff comes. But I want you to understand that the automating of deployment is basically what I consider a maturation or a part of the maturity model, with automation being the top, the highest end of the ability to deploy on an automated basis. So we're going to talk, as you're going to see in a minute, we're going to talk about different best practice frameworks like Agile and Lean and Agile, all leading up and all feeding into this world of DevOps. The good news is every one of them, Agile, Lean, Agile, DevOps, all have the same basic reason for being, their raison d'etre, and that is to deliver value to the business. Period, end of sentence. There really isn't anything else. Okay, so then, okay, that's fine. That just sounds a little bit smoke and mirror there. I'm sorry. Yeah, I've heard the value conversations to know what it is, or how do I define it, or what is it? Well, a couple things. First of all, we're going to say that value has three elements: quality, speed, and cost. And believe it or not, the one that we're not going to talk about much, if at all, is cost. The reason is quality. If you really decide to go quality, really quality, then cost will take care of itself. Eventually, speed will take care of itself if you go with quality. It's short-term, quality takes longer because we're not used to it. Because right now we're in the world of trade-off. Hey, I want the highest possible quality for that, but I need it on Thursday. Okay, well, I could give you the highest possible quality, or I can give you the highest possible quality by Thursday, but that's not really the highest quality because it's Thursday. So the point being here is that speed definitely affects this, and in some cases, if it doesn't arrive at the right time, it has no value. So part of it's not a linear conversation. They're all there together. But what if in your organization the decision for absolute quality was already made? Excuse me. What if that decision was already made? What if we were always going to produce the absolute top quality? Everything else then would just kind of fall in. That would be an amazing conversation. And in a way, that's exactly what Lean tells us to do, and that's what Agile attempts to do, and that's what DevOps certainly needs if there's any hope of automation. If you want to automate testing and put things out into deployment that don't break would be the key word, that don't break themselves or anything else, then that's quality, isn't it? So how's that going to work if we don't embed it earlier and earlier and earlier in the process? Okay, here's another definition from Gartner this time. The first one was from Wikipedia. So a change in culture, same thing, because of rapid IT delivery, agile practices, emphasizes. Okay. So what is it? It's a movement, it's a philosophy, it's development and ops, it's a culture shift, dramatically culture shift, teaming, communication and collaboration between all aspects of IT. Automation is in there, speed is in there, change. We're going to change, things will change. We're going to talk about change management today. But at the same time, speed and change, the opposite of that in our normal thinking is reliability and stability. If I have speed and change, I'm not going to have reliability and stability. Yes, you can have both seemingly contradictory elements in the same IT shop. Okay, what isn't it? What is it not? It's not a team necessarily. It's not a job title. It's not only for web startups. It's not a way to eliminate ops. It's not just tools, it's for automation, and it's not unworkable in a normal, regular IT environment. Okay, we talked about this. These are those 15 practices. We talked in some detail 2 weeks ago about numbers 1 through 8, so we're picking up with number 9 today. And number 9 is going to be change management. So Puppet Labs is a DevOps tool vendor. So they sell software, they sell tools. And why would I put them in here? Because it's very interesting that they would quote this, which is some eager to start in the DevOps path, begin by researching which tools they should buy. More important than the tools are the technical practices. This is from a tool vendor. So they want you to be successful, and in order to be successful, you're going to have to go with the practices before the tools. I mentioned earlier, we're basically folding in ITIL, Lean, and Agile to basically make our world of the full stack of DevOps. So we're picking up in detail here with number 9, good old change management. And I'm giving you a nice graphic which describes basically very traditional ITIL change management, change approval process. I think that most of us are familiar with something like this, where there's a request for change that's generated. Those changes are then evaluated or vetted by the change manager. They could be minor, significant, major. If they're minor, the change manager could actually make a decision on their own, deciding on priority and urgency, and go ahead and authorize it themselves, put it on the change calendar. If it's significant, it goes to a CAB, which usually meets weekly for authorization, then gets scheduled by the change manager. If it's huge, perhaps the management board gets involved. And then there's that little square box over on the side called pre-approved changes. Now, pre-approved change is considered a low risk, very predictable outcome, a somewhat smaller change. And it's always been part of the ITIL change management, change approval process, always. But when we get into the world of DevOps, this picture is going to shift. And when you look at it, you'll understand. So on the left side is pretty much the equivalent of what I just showed you. The before DevOps, the world of ITIL, the world of standard IT, where say 10% of the changes would be pre-approved, 10 might be minor. The normal change would be, say, and don't get hung up on the percentages, but basically normal changes or complex changes is 70%, and then unfortunately some urgent changes would be there. After DevOps, the way I believe it will change, and the way DevOps wants it to change, the way automated deployment needs it to change, the way everything as code needs it to change, is the column on the right. So most changes, by far more than half changes, maybe even 75, 80, and some people have talked to 90% of the changes would be standard pre-approved changes that did not need to go through a vetting process. And the reason why they wouldn't go through that vetting process in the world of DevOps is because the process to create the change has been vetted. In fact, it's more vetted than a meeting. It's vetted by an API, because the only way the change can make it through certain gates are through an API. It's the only way it can make it from step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 is to go through automated testing. And if it fails in any facet of the automated test, it's kicked back to the beginning. So therefore, by the time it makes it to the concept of actual provisioning, deployment, and then actual release to the customer, it's been through more vetting than we normally would do during a change management meeting or a CAB meeting or those types of things. So therefore, I see this in the future, and it's not that distant that I see that this on the right side can actually happen. Does change management go away? No, I don't believe it actually does. I believe that it sticks around, and one of the reasons it sticks around is because I see the possibility, and I really see this easily happening, of changes going in an automated fashion, a pre-approved fashion, where they actually collide, where the changes actually collide and actually cause issues. Now, there's obviously ways around that, scheduling around that, things of that nature, but I think that change management as a discipline will remain. I think it will change, it itself will change in what it actually does. Okay, gotta get moving here. So configuration management, that seems to be pretty old school. Why would I need that in this new and exciting world of DevOps, where I'm going to have most of my elements be infrastructure as code or infrastructure as a service, platform as a service. I'm going to basically have it all in the cloud. That begs the question, well, do I need configuration management if I have a cloud and if basically all my infrastructure is up in the cloud? And the answer is absolutely. In fact, maybe more than you ever did before. Because in the old days, we could basically we had physical devices. We could just run a scan maybe and see what they were. Here, the problem becomes I need to be able to create or provision a server or multiple servers that actually form a system. I need to be able to create all of that at the click of a mouse. So I just simply click a button, I get 3 servers or 10 servers, they're all interconnected, they all have different IP addresses, of course, and they all, and an image is loaded for on those servers, and and then applications, SQL, things like that are loaded onto those servers, all basically at the click of a mouse. So what's that server look like? Well, you better know, because you're the one actually going to be responsible for actually provisioning those servers in great detail. Every aspect of that provisioning is going to be under your control. So therefore, that, my friends, is true configuration management, and it perhaps more important in the world of DevOps and in this world of automated deployment and automated release than it even was in our past life. So configuration management does not go away. I need to be able to keep track of exactly what's on each one of those boxes as I bring them up, as I take them down, as I change them or alter them or patch them. All of that has to be done in configuration management. So number 11, now we got knowledge management. Well, the traditional concept of knowledge management, the traditional discussion about knowledge management, has always started with basically the service desk knowledge base. So in other words, I call the service desk, they have a knowledge base of incidents and what goes wrong, and then hopefully that knowledge base of incidents is also a knowledge base of resolutions. So therefore they do a quick search, they find a resolution, they tell me, I'm done. And that's the traditional knowledge base. And then we've moved that forward into problem management in the world of ITIL, and ITIL talks about the fact that problem management would have a known error database. So through the problem management process, we would identify known errors, which we either fixed, making them not an error, known error, or we allowed to continue. So we can allow these known errors, obviously, and keep going, and then put in a workaround around the known error, and that's all part of the knowledge base. We can do those either way. But that's just the beginning. That's the tip of the iceberg. we basically now are in a situation where older people like myself are retiring from IT shops, and with those retirements goes a great deal of knowledge. Not necessarily. I mean, I could wax poetic on DOS memory management, and nobody would care because you don't need DOS memory management today. Don't get me wrong. I think there's definitely some of the things that older people know that aren't useful today. But truthfully, there's a lot of things they know that aren't written down. So what we really want in terms of knowledge management is the ability to make knowledge searchable, indexable, approachable, and usable. One of the dilemmas we run into in the world of knowledge management is that there's still a belief out there, and I wish it would go away, but it really doesn't, that I am more valuable because of what I know and because you don't know it. So in other words, I seem to be more valuable if I hoard knowledge and protect knowledge from being shared. Whereas what we really want is we want to create the environment where sharing knowledge is actually the most valuable thing you can do. So we have to actually flip that around. We have to take the uber geek who basically knows everything and doesn't tell anyone how to do it, and convert that uber geek into the person who's actually over the knowledge base and checking to see whether the things that are in the knowledge base are correct, because he or she has all that knowledge, and therefore they don't even have to look it up. They just know that's wrong, this is right, that's wrong, this is right. Oh, this could be better. You could talk about this one differently. So we have to create this concept that where knowledge is actually shared, because that the idea is that in the world of DevOps, we need a very transparent culture. There can't be jockeying for position. There can't be anything competitive. We're talking about team accountability. We're not talking about individual accountability. And that means no one human being gets blamed when something goes wrong. Indeed, there really isn't a lot of blame. If something goes wrong, as things will inevitably happen, if we make a mistake, or the idea is in this culture is, yes, that was an issue. What did we learn? What did we learn from that mistake? What did we learn from that error? What did we learn from that outage? That's what we need to work on in terms of knowledge management, because that lessons learned conversation and never repeat the same error twice, those are what we really are after. So number 12 is basically release and deployment, or release management. So the concept here is, does this go away? So since we're trying to get to an automated release, we're trying to get to automated deployment at least, and I separate this where we're saying, where I define provisioning as creating the physical environment and the software environment necessary to receive a piece of code or basically a solution or a service. Then I define deployment as where the code is actually on the production servers. It's actually in production, technically. Physically, the code is in the production environment, but the end user can't see it, doesn't know it's there, isn't available to them. Finally, the release is actually simply turning it on or making it available to the user. So by that time, we've been able to actually conduct integration testing with the actual code on the actual production environment, in addition to all the other testing, even to get to that point. So the final release is simply flipping a switch and saying, hi, it's there, those kinds of things. But it's been there perhaps for a week or two by the time we get to it. I do not believe that release management goes away, because I now, just as we've always done in the world of ITIL and the world of IT, we need someone accountable for the successful release of a given service or a given product or a given piece of code. We need someone, either it's a team or it's an individual human who's actually accountable for a successful release. And as these things become smaller and smaller pieces that come from various teams, I need someone to bring it all together. I need someone to go through all that integration testing, someone to be accountable. So the concept of release management, I do not believe goes away. I believe it stays. I believe that it can move perhaps to the actual product teams and maybe to the platform teams, where we basically have a little mixture of mostly dev people on the product team, but an ops person or two, mostly ops people on a platform team, but a dev person or two. But basically the teams then become the accountable party for a successful release. Number 13, incident management. This isn't incident management hardly new, but we have to look at this from a new vantage point now. So a couple things. First of all, in the world of lean, incident management is considered waste. Now this freaks some people out because, whoa, wait a minute, that's my job. I'm the head of the help desk, or I have the help desk under me, or we have 30 people at the help desk. What are you talking about? Incident management's a waste. Well, it's not that lean believes that incident management is waste. Lean believes that incidents are waste. Lean believes there shouldn't be incidents. Lean believes you should aspire to perfection. Therefore, why would you have incidents if you were perfect? You wouldn't. So as we aspire more and more to perfection, I would expect to see the number of incidents go down. Over time, it's obviously going to take time. Therefore, the concept of managing the incidents is going to be a bit different, since there's going to be fewer incidents. That doesn't mean there's going to be fewer requests for new things. That all of those things will probably go up. So do I think we're talking about fewer people in the role of support? I think that what we're going to see is that, and I think we're already seeing this, is that the easy stuff should go away, because we should have fixed it with problem management. We'll talk about that. We should have fixed it with continuous improvement. We'll talk about that in a minute. So therefore, the real easy things, the repeat incidents, I believe will go away, slowly but surely, or certainly lessen over time. And I think that's been our goal for decades, is to get the repeat stuff out. So we're going to get rid of that. So the ones that we're going to have are new. So they're going to be new, they're going to be a little more complicated, and we are getting environments that are more complex, kind of accidentally. We had environment A, and now the business, unfortunately, has gone out and bought a SaaS solution all by themselves, and somehow IT has to support that, even though they weren't involved in the decision or anything else. And that's of course cloud-based, and now we ourselves are becoming more cloud-based. So the concept of triaging and identifying the root cause of certain incidents is becoming much more difficult. Much more difficult. We're talking about things that in the past, if on a physical environment, in our own shop, in our own data center, we'd be able to identify the root cause, or at least get to the component that was failing. We'd be able to get to that within an hour or 2 hours. Now we're seeing places where it's taking days to actually identify the true, honest to God, root cause of what's going on. And the reason is because we have increased the complexity of our infrastructure. We've got some physical stuff. We have physical servers that are housing our own virtual servers in-house. Then we're adding solutions, or when we write something brand new, we might do that completely in the cloud, might get an infrastructure as a service or platform as a service provider. Then we're going to put our solution on it. All of those pieces still now are part of incident management in general. The other piece of this is that, and it's different than the old days, and that is that we're now including development in incident management. And before DevOps, what we basically would do is development would create this product or service, throw it over the wall to ops. It was ops' problem. If it didn't work, if the actual code that came over didn't work, it was still ops' problem. It never went back to dev to get fixed. The best analogy that I've ever heard, and it was from Gene Kim, was the fact that if you give someone a puppy that's not house trained, the people who receive it get to give it back until it's house trained. So therefore, the code that comes across the wall, if it was not house trained and therefore it was peeing where it wasn't supposed to pee, basically we get to give it back until it's house trained, back to development. So what you finally see is that dev is now part of incident management. They're part of the major incident procedure. They're part of level 2 and level 3 support, whereas they never were before. And that's a huge change, huge shift. And of course, in the world of ITIL, we talked about the difference between incidents, which is something goes wrong, and a problem, which is basically the root cause of incidents. And if incidents can recur and recur and recur, problems should never recur. Once we've basically addressed the root cause, fixed it, then we should never see it again. So effective problem management actually then leads us to get rid of repeat incidents and have fewer and fewer and fewer incidents as we move forward. So now as we move forward in this world of problem management, we're also including the dev team. So the dev team is now also part of finding the root cause and fixing the root cause, whether it's a workaround or whether it's an actual rewrite of the code, a new release perhaps, version number of the code. So all of that becomes part of the DevOps world, and all of that becomes part of problem management as we move forward in the DevOps maturity. And we talk a little bit about reactive versus proactive problem solving. So reactive problem solving is basically incidents happen, things go wrong, we then address it, and maybe we get to the root cause. If we do, we fix it. So let's say that one of the things that went wrong is my laptop keeps rebooting all by itself. Okay, so now we discover that there's 13 people who that same problem is happening to, so we make it turn it into a problem. We find the root cause. It's basically the rev level of the BIOS. We discover that if we flash the BIOS with the newest version, the problem goes away. Great, fantastic. The reactive side is done. Proactive would be, but wait, we own 1,700 of those exact same laptop models. So now what do? Do we now approach this proactively and go out and flash the BIOS on every one of those machines in order to head off the problem? I think if quality is your number one decision making, the answer would be, yep, that'd be what you do. Or you could decide to wait for the problem or issue to happen. So one of the way that Lean does problem solving and problem management is through Kaizen. That's what stands for Change for the Better, and it basically believes that there's always room for improvement. It defines the issue, defines the problem, focuses on it, and the whole concept behind a Kaizen event is to get rid of it. It's basically the new word for problem management. ITIL problem management, get to the root cause. Lean Kaizen, get to the root cause. Using DMAIC as the cycle for improvement. We get DMAIC out of Six Sigma. Okay, last but not least, the ability to institutionalize all this with continual service improvement. Now, in ITIL, we have this continual service improvement process. There we go. So did Henry Ford 100 years ago know that what he had created was going to be improved? Yes, it's exactly what he knew. He didn't know how, but he knew that even though what he did was, for its time, unbelievable, now we discover, he said, there's always going to be something better. And if you think that way, that's good. If you don't think that way, then progress stops. So here's a continual service improvement process. It turns out the most important piece of this is over on the left side. How do we keep the momentum going? Because we can do all this as a big bang, and we can make a lot of noise, all of that, but in the end, this gets tiring. We need a lot of stamina to keep reintroducing it and redoing this and redoing this and redoing this. So obviously, one of the hardest things is that momentum piece and the stamina to keep it going. So that's key to the whole continual service improvement process. So these are the 15 practices now that we've talked about over 2 separate webinars, and we just finished up with number 15. The roles that we haven't talked about are the 2 that I care about are the fact that the service owner from ITIL all the way back 10 years ago, is very akin to the Agile product owner, where you've got people, one person in both cases, taking accountability for the product or service, overall accountability for the product or service. Those two roles, I believe, could easily merge into one. We also have, of course, a release manager, change manager, CSI manager, and BRM. The role of the business relationship manager becomes new when you start to look at DevOps, because of all the collaboration that has to take place, not just between Dev and Ops, between DevOps and security, but between DevOps, security, and the business. So, as I said, the ITSM service owner and Agile product owner are really two sides of the same coin. I find those two roles to be incredibly similar. Okay, so I am out of time, and I just wanted you to have a few contact details for me. Here they are. Feel free to email me, go on LinkedIn, whatever you like to do. Also, we are recording this. That recording will be available shortly. The slides are available as well. Thank you all for tuning in. I really appreciate your time. I know you could be doing something else. Good morning, good afternoon, good night. This is George Spalding signing off. Thanks a lot.